Showing up, connecting to audio. Welcome. Hi, Judy. Hi, Gary. So fun to see you guys. I always have to scroll. Hello. I always have to scroll through all of the pictures so I can see you guys and wave, and it's lovely. So good. Jean, I haven't seen you in forever. Oh, hi from New Jersey. Excellent. I wonder what the weather's like in New Jersey. It can't be as hot as Arizona. I hope for you. Oh, hot and humid. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's right about 10 o'clock. I'm going to kick us off because we have a busy hour. And so I'm super excited to be here with everyone today. I'm Sarah with PMD Alliance, and we're excited to have another wonderful, physically distanced but socially connected live stream today with our amazing MDS neurology host, Indu Subramanian. So happy to have you all. Really quickly, one little quick piece of housekeeping. If you're new to us, new to this, two things to know. One is in the right corner, top corner, you can hit speaker view and or gallery view, depending on which one you have on. If you have on the gallery view, you get to see like the Brady Bunch with everybody's happy faces. If you click speaker view, then you're going to have a spotlight on the speaker. And in the bottom, I can see that it's already happening. There's some chats down in the bottom. You can feel free to put, your chats down in here too, and we'll just kind of keep track of those. And I'm excited to hear from our guest today. Indu, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for everything you do for PMD Alliance.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, thank you, Sarah. It's great to see you. Sarah is just the inspiration for all of the PMD Alliance universe and all the great things they do. And, it was not a hard decision to figure out who to partner with when it came to trying to do something nice for patients and connect us all. So I know it's been stressful for everyone with COVID, and hopefully everyone's staying safe. And we are indeed physically distanced, but we are socially connected and virtually connected through this universe. And I think it's really an amazing coincidence that we happened to ask Claudia Trenkwalder, Professor Trenkwalder, to join us today, and she agreed, and it's World Brain Day, woohoo! So I'm dressed up in my Indian sari to represent for the global universe. And as many of you know, I'm not only Canadian and a proud Canadian and American now, but also Indian. Those are my roots, and I really, enjoy my homeland and all the people in it. And so representing for everyone around the world and hoping to connect people around the Parkinson's cause today. So it's just a pleasure to have Professor Trenkwalder, who I'll call Claudia for now on, here on our series. And we're going to be talking about the Movement Disorders Society and their partnership with the World Federation of Neurology, and what World Brain Day means, and how exciting it is to have Parkinson's disease as the disease of the year. We're just kicking that off, and there'll be several months of many offerings, and I think a lot of activism going on. I know in the Twitter universe and Facebook, a lot of people getting together to try to make a difference in this disease. And I woke up at 5:30. I'm not a morning person, to see Professor Trenkwalder and a number of our other colleagues from around the world talk about this on the World Brain Day kickoff event, which I encourage you to watch. I think it's on video, but they had a number of really interesting statistics and a number of interesting questions that they took. And so maybe we can get to some of the questions that weren't asked today from that as well, because I think there was a lot of interesting issues that came up. So I'll introduce Claudia. She's a professor of movement disorders in Goettingen. I think I pronounced that right. Goettingen, Germany, and she is also the president of the Movement Disorders Society. I think she's the first president who is a woman, yay, that's also very exciting, of the Movement Disorders Society. And we're so excited to see the women getting together and lifting each other up, and the energy that having women as our leader has already brought. I feel like it's just been really amazing to connect so many of us together and think about issues in a different way. So we're hoping to highlight some of those today. So without further ado, Claudia, maybe you can tell us a little bit about why you became a neurologist and why you became interested in Parkinson's disease and how your journey led to being the president of the Movement Disorders Society.
Yeah, first, I really like to say hello to everyone, and especially also thank you, Indu and Sarah and the PD Alliance, that I have the chance today to talk to you. And I think it's a great coincidence, I would say, that we are here at World Brain Day today, which is just for Parkinson's disease this year. And as you heard, you can go to the World Brain Day webinar or slides, and you can maybe pick up a lot of additional information. So I think it's maybe a very common way that I took why I got a neurologist. First, I wanted to become a psychiatrist, and I started to do my doctoral thesis on psychiatry and did a lot of things there. And then finally I found a nice mentor of psychiatry, and he told me, if you want to become a psychiatrist, you have to start with neurology, because in Germany you need 1 year of neurology to become a psychiatrist. Yeah. And usually people do this at the end, but he advised me do it at the beginning. And I did. And when I started neurology, I found that this is even much more interesting than psychiatry, and it is the brain as it is, and you see something. And so I started with neurology and decided to stay there.
That's really cool. Well, it's their loss from psychiatry and our gain in neurology. So, and as we both know, Parkinson's is a disease that overlaps with many issues in both areas. So I think it was probably good that you like that anyway. But that's exciting. And then how did you end up becoming more involved in the society and wanting to advocate in this way?
Yeah, so finally, when I started neurology, I just got by chance to Parkinson's disease in my very first year of a resident of neurology. And it was Wolfgang Oertel at this time at the neurology department at the University of Munich. And he just needed desperately a person who helped him at his outpatient office. And he asked me, can you help me with the Parkinson patients? And I told him, I don't know anything about Parkinson's. And he told me, that's very easy. I teach you in 3 days. And so I started with a 3-day. And after 3 days, I found this is really interesting. So I continued with movement disorders and Parkinson's disease. And I can tell you, I'm doing it now almost 30 years. And I find it still very interesting, and each patient is different. And I think this is the most exciting for this topic, for me at least, that we have these large individual variability, and you learn from each patient something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and finally, this is the way also I came to the Movement Disorders Society then.
Mm-hmm. And you have a background also in doing research in sleep. Could you tell us a little bit about your interest in sleep?
Yeah, this was then the next step, that we had patients with restless leg syndrome, and at that time we didn't know ourselves, what is this and what can we do? But we saw in Munich some severe patients, and so we did some more research. And again, Wolfgang Oertel, he told me, you will find out on this. I don't know, but you will find out. And he told me, I give you a book. And it was the book of David Marston about the movement disorders. And indeed, in this book, you can also find the description about restless leg syndrome. And so I came to sleep, and I looked for a sleep lab to study more these patients. And I found the sleep lab at the Max Planck Institute of Psychiatry in Munich. And so I spent my psychiatry time at that institute, which is also a big research institute doing translational research still from neuroscience to patients. And I think this was my most interesting research time. I spent finally then some years there to do sleep and movement disorders, both for restless leg syndrome and for Parkinson's disease. And with this topic, finally, I started also with the World Sleep Society and also then came to the Movement Disorder Society with the topic movement disorders and sleep, which there were not many people, except maybe Cindy Comella at that time, who were in that area.
So you really kind of tied these pieces together and came to the society. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, and you also spent a little bit of time, I think you told me, in the United States in your training, right? You spent some time. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, this was at the early 90s. When I met at some AAN meeting where I presented some research on restless leg syndrome, I met Art Walters and Wayne Henning. He unfortunately already died some years ago, but they were fellows from, they were in New York. And they asked me if I would like to join them, at least for some time, at the VA in Lyons at that time and in New Brunswick. And so as they were both with Stan Phan once and did their movement disorder fellowship there, we thought we should do more research together on movement disorders and on restless leg syndrome. And so finally I got a stipend and I went to New Jersey and I traveled either to the VA or to New Brunswick. So I had two places and it was a very interesting time. And we did some studies on circadian rhythm in restless leg syndrome, but also on some neurophysiology in RLS. So this was the beginning not only of, I would say, a really pioneer research at that time, but also of a great friendship of the three of us. And this is still continuing, at least with Art Walters. And finally, after many years, 20 years later, he spent a sabbatical with us here at the University of Goettingen and did some research here. So it took a long time, but the collaboration went on.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you're really interested in collaboration and world collaboration. And I think that's sort of part of the mission of the Movement Disorders Society. Could you tell us a little bit about why the Movement Disorders Society exists and kind of what it also has to offer for patients? Because I think the patients are really hungry to learn about, how they can learn from this.
Yeah. I think the Movement Disorder Society has primarily the mission to increase the awareness, to give education, to stimulate research on Parkinson's and movement disorders. And for this, I think a key issue of the MDS is that this is sort of central organization with a lot of collaborations, but also it's regional. Many of the courses are within the sections. So the MDS is divided in three or in the future 4 sections: the Pan American section, the European section, the Asian Oceanian section, and in future the African section. And it is like 20 years ago, it was much more a central organization, starting from Europe and the US, maybe UK and US, but it got more and more a real global organization. And I think this is good, as we can really integrate global problems and global issues. And the very good thing is the collaboration. So it is needed to have international collaboration also for research. Otherwise, I think we will not make real big progress. And you see this today now with the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a global society, it's a global disease, and we have to take into account all the different regions and what happens in the different countries to finally get over it. And I think this is similar with Parkinson's disease. We have to look at what happens in the different regions, countries, but also have a central structure and organizations. And for me, it's very important that we have a collaboration that both supports the regions, also those who are not so familiar with, let's say, who are not native speaking English regions, small countries, that they have a chance to get their voices in the Movement Disorder Society, but also to give some ways, some allies for them, how they can manage. And there are a lot of programs also in the Movement Disorder Society with mentoring for young people. We have a huge young members group because we need dedicated young members and researchers if we really want to win something for the future of movement disorders. So we need young people that not only go into stroke research and multiple sclerosis or epilepsy, we need young people dedicated to Parkinson's disease. And so we do all these regional courses, and we give stipends for our young members. We offer them now for the first time also oral talks, also at our virtual congress. There we will select from abstracts some young people who present there so that they get used to talk and to present their research. And this is very important to stimulate also the young ones.
Absolutely. Well, we really want to keep the pipeline of bright minds going. So it's not just, you know, those of us that have done this for a while. So you also have a patient education arm that you're, I think, really building. And I understand that there's some handouts and you've translated them into a number of languages. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, this was an initiative from Joaquim Ferreira from Lisbon in Portugal. And he organized to have a lot of patient leaflets. And if you go on the website of the Movement Disorder Society, you also will find some corner where it say for patients. And then there is a list of all the leaflets in the different languages, but also the different topics of the leaflets that you can just download. You don't need to become a member or to register. You can just download what's available there. And we will maybe also increase the numbers and the topic of these leaflets. And I would say it would be also a great idea if you look at this and if you send us an email saying what is missing, because sometimes we as doctors, we don't know what are you missing here. So please give us some hints, some ideas, what you would like to see on that page and what kind of leaflets or information you would like to see.
Yeah, and I just listed a few of the some of the handout topics, just briefly. I'll name some of them. So they include things like exercise and Parkinson's disease, gait and freezing. There's one just specifically on deep brain stimulation surgeries, orthostatic. So that's like when your blood pressure drops. Sleep, impulse control disorders is another one. One on botulinum toxins. So if you're undergoing those sorts of injections. cognition, and then one on depression, anxiety, and apathy. So there's sort of a mix of just motor as well as non-motor issues that are kind of in there. I noticed today, Claudia, that on the chat this morning, there was really a highlight on non-motor issues in Parkinson's disease as an unmet need. Could you tell us a little bit about your thoughts, especially since you're a sleep doctor as well?
I think the non-motor issues are sometimes even as important as the motor issues. There are some papers saying the non-motor issues are much more important. I'm not so sure about this because I saw that many of our patients really complain about the tremor and find the tremor very uncomfortable and the slowing of gait and walking. So don't underestimate the motor problems. But from the non-motor ones, I think the number one is the depression and anxiety. And if we go to any of these questionnaires or of quality of life scores, it's always underestimated. If you look at them finally at the numbers, depression and anxiety makes the quality of life really miserable. And I think also many of the neurologists underestimate the importance to treat depression and anxiety and also sleep. Sleep is much disturbed in Parkinson patients in many ways. And number one here is the insomnia and the disruption of sleep, waking up in the middle of the night with akinesia, not being able to turn around in the morning, having cramps, not being able to stand up properly. And these are problems that patients may not always talk to their doctors during the consultation, but they should do, because a good night's sleep can really improve the day a lot. So it is important. And sure, the REM sleep behavior disorder is an important factor. This is shouting and activity during the dreaming sleep, which is important as an early sign for Parkinson's disease. And in some patients, it is important to treat if they have some violence in the sleep, but this is not so often. And I think from the doctors, it may be overestimated because it's not the problem of the patient many times. The patients are suffering much more from the akinesia, from the sleep disruption, the insomnia, and maybe the restless leg syndrome when they walk around at the beginning of sleep and cannot fall asleep.
Just on that note, there's been a sense in some of the literature that sleep and deep sleep is when you get restoration happening in your brain cells. And also there's been a literature on a sense that you detoxify and maybe proteins that are accumulating may actually be removed in sleep. Maybe you could tell us your opinion on that, Claudia. I'd really love to hear that.
Some years ago, there have been interesting papers published, especially in Alzheimer research. And there were some mouse models in Alzheimer's disease with the Alzheimer mouse model showing that if there is not enough sleep, the, as you say, detoxification of the brain with the amyloid is not finished. So that those have a higher risk for developing maybe Alzheimer's disease earlier if there is a lot of insomnia and sleep disruption. This has not been proven for Parkinson's disease, for the alpha-synuclein, which is the protein that is or makes deposits in the brain of Parkinson's disease patients with the so-called Lewy bodies. but we assume that there is a similar mechanism, that the recreation, or especially of cognition, of our memory, is not sufficiently happening if the sleep is so much disrupted. And with the sleep disruptions, you have to imagine you are always in the light sleep, and there are a lot of periodic limb movements, we call these leg activities. And always, if you want to come into a deeper state of sleep, then these leg activities or any other movements come up, and you stay again in this very light sleep or wake up. And the many wake ups and the lack of deep sleep may cause finally also this feeling of a non-refreshing sleep.
And I know that you are a big proponent of exercise as well in Parkinson's. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your thoughts on exercise just in general for Parkinson's, but also maybe as it relates to sleep, because I know that there's been a few new papers on the concept of exercise helping sleep in Parkinson's as well.
I think there is a bunch of literature and then really increasing numbers of papers about exercise in Parkinson's and physical activity in general. And what I found most amazing is there is a paper out from, I think, the largest nursery home in Boston, with hundreds of very elderly people living there. And they did a trial there and did training with those over 80 and compared them to 40 years old and did the same sort of exercise, the hours, intensity, and then they measured how much the very elderly gained about that. And they gained the same amount of muscles, of activity. And this is always my argument, saying to my elderly Parkinson patients, you should try. You still can improve your condition. You can improve your muscle. You have to talk to your doctor before you start a training program, because some have a cardiac disease or some orthopedic problems. So you have to do this on an individual basis, but you can improve your condition. And there are other papers, not only one, several ones, saying that in any stage of Parkinson's disease, even if this is a fluctuating PD with dyskinesias or off periods, they can improve by physical activity. So you always can improve the condition. The prerequisite is you have to do it several times a week, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And you have to be persistent. Do it for weeks and months, and you will see the improvement. I'm always a bit doubting if the patients tell me, I need the prescription for this once a week. It's good to have it once a week exercise, but finally the patient has to do it several times a week. And I think this is the message that we should give you. Once a week is not enough. I don't know what you think, Innu, but
yeah, I think we try to do at least 20 to 30 minutes every day if possible, maybe take a day off, but an hour is optimal. And as you know, I'm quite interested in not just, cardiac exercise, but I like to mix it up. I think yoga is really interesting. And I was excited to hear on the talk this morning that somebody asked if yoga could cure Parkinson's. So I think that's really much. People in the world are that excited about yoga, but I think Susan Fox gave a nice answer, which she said that the stretching seem to help, and some of the meditation may help with the non-motor aspects. So she gave a really nice answer, but I think many of us would agree that exercise, if possible daily, is helpful. And what's your sense of exercise with sleep, Claudia? Is there benefits on sleep with
We did not do a study there, but what we saw, and there are studies out saying that with regular exercise, you can improve your sleep. You can improve your sleep also with, I would say, a combination of exercise and light therapy, so that you entrain your circadian rhythm, because this is something that is also missing if people are too much inside their homes and don't go outside. So they have to go outside also in the morning to get the morning light. Best time would be 8 o'clock, so that you really bring your circadian clock in good shape again, especially in winter times when there is not so much sun. So light and exercise, but maybe not the very strong exercise in the evening, but better during the daytime, morning or afternoon.
So not to exercise too close to when you're trying to sort of wind down to go to sleep. Yes. And do the light, the exposure to light, so you set the morning as a clock, like you've seen the sunlight. And I know that you like to get out into nature and hike, I think you told me. So maybe I think getting out in nature is also very helpful for our patients. And I think, with COVID especially, many people are stuck at home and they're, not sort of in the normal routine, and ends up, they take their medicines off schedule and sleep in the day and they're up at night. And so I think it's important to emphasize this routine with trying to see the light and maybe getting out a little bit into nature if possible, and exercising and winding down in the evening with the sleep routine. I think that's all very helpful to encourage. One of the things that came up today in the chat was about how people in many countries are not able to recognize Parkinson's disease early enough, and there's really a delay in treating patients. Could you speak a little bit about what the MDS is doing to try to help with that, and also, how patients can advocate for that as well?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do here is educate and to increase the awareness of Parkinson's disease. I'm even not so sure that also in our countries, sometimes the diagnosis is really delayed. So it's not only in the remote areas, but also just in the middle of Germany, in European countries, it takes sometimes years for the diagnosis of PD. And this is especially the case when there are not many neurologists around, so that patients are seeing only the GP, and the GPs, they may recognize a tremor, but if there is no tremor, it may take quite a long time. And another area which is really underdiagnosed is Parkinson's in younger patients. It's often overlooked because Parkinson's is thought just a disease of aging. And so I think it's helpful to have these courses. So we had a lot of courses even on prodromal Parkinson's disease. That means looking at symptoms which occur earlier than you have the usual diagnosis of PD. That means the sleep disorder, like REM sleep behavior disorder, but also olfactory problems, people who have a loss of the sense of smell and say, I don't smell the coffee anymore. This would be a sign, but also just a little bit change of the fine motor skills. So there are some early signs, and the population make aware of these early signs that the patients are diagnosed earlier.
Absolutely. So I think that the MDS is trying to get more education out, and then also I think there's been a real push to there's a shortage of neurologists in the world. In many parts of the world, patients don't see a neurologist at all. There might be a few neurologists in the entire country in some situations. I think even in the US, we have some states that have no specialty trained movement disorder specialists in an entire state. So really trying to disseminate information. I think we're in a good position now with COVID that we're doing so many meetings with Zoom, and we're able to, and I know that the Movement Disorder Society's really opened up this meeting. I was just speaking to one of your colleagues who spoke very highly of you, Claudia, about who's one of the organizers, and was saying that this year they had an option to cancel the meeting or make some parts of it virtual, or make it all virtual. And you decided to do the last, which is to make it all virtual, which is, I know, taken a huge amount of work. I was speaking to Kate, and you changed everything over to virtual, including the Video Olympics. And so I think that's very commendable, and really opening it up, I think, for minimal or free, I think, for many people to attend. So I think hopefully people can find the courses that they want their local doctors to watch, and maybe highlight them and hint to them that maybe they can look at these. But I think, there's a lot of offerings out there. It's just a matter of getting people to open their minds and to learn about the disease. And I think one of the problems is there's so much misconception, as you mentioned. People think of this as a disease that only affects older men. And a lot of the research that we've done has largely been in older, I think, white men who are married. And so, many of the ways that we approach this have been really skewed. And I think having people understand that this is a disease that can affect, a significant number of people worldwide that are below the age of 40, that it's, less common, but can definitely happen in women, have manifestations, like you said. You don't have to have tremor to get the diagnosis. It can present in different kinds of ways. And so I think, really increasing education is absolutely the key for the number one advocacy. And I think for patients who want to get more advocacy out there, I think, supporting education at a local level, getting people to, connect through these digital mediums for basic courses, I think would be really, really important. And I think one of the issues is also that if you as a patient feel like you're not getting anywhere and you're getting answers that don't make sense, to try to find the right doctors. And I know the Movement Disorder Society has a specialist directory that you have on the website. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this was initiated some years ago, that patients were looking really for specialists and say, oh, we have them all in our society. But it was not just written or sorted. So finally, we decided, at least for the US, there is a specialist directory, and we ask the doctors if they agree that they are listed in this directory, and I can say 80% of them agreed. And I think this is a good source to find a movement disorder expert or a neurologist who, I would say, who cares about Parkinson's disease. And some are really experts, but they may not have the time to really do a good care. So there are sometimes some troubles. At least in Germany it is like this, that I get some complaints about some doctors, and then we call them, we go back, and then finally we can sort it out. But you can look at that directory and get the proper doctor for you. And maybe another advice, you mentioned this virtual congress in September, and it took me quite an effort, as you say, to make it the total congress virtual, because finally the society wanted to have only a small meeting for some days, and I said, no, we do it all, we can do it, and we do the Video Olympics, we do everything. And now we see everyone is excited and it should be possible. But I tried to change it also to the weekend. So the Saturday and the Sunday, these 2 days, we have the most, would say, educational lectures on the Saturday. So the entire Saturday is what we previously had on the Sunday. I think Indu, you may be familiar with our program. And these are the therapeutic sessions. So update on all the therapeutics over Parkinson and movement disorders. And so it's an opportunity for the doctors who are busy during the week to go on this Congress for free and just look at the educational updates on Saturday and Sunday. So you can bring maybe a printout of the website of the virtual Congress to your doctor and tell them, here you get the update if you just go on the Saturday morning, and then you can get it. This is especially designed for that, and we will also invite even GPs for that, and the presentation will be understandable so that you can really get something out. And I did a little bit more because global. So what about the time difference? If you have your morning, it's already late at night in Tokyo. And so I could convince the society to do it twice. So we will have a separate curriculum with the same presentations in Asia that starts almost half a day at their proper morning. In Asia with some local Asian chairs, but the same presentation. And then the Western Hemisphere starts with the US and Europe. So it's in your proper time, and everyone has the opportunity to get the update on therapeutics.
Amazing. I think that now no one has an excuse not to know about Parkinson's. So you've really thought.
No excuse anymore.
And hopefully, maybe, I don't know, it would be great to have some of those on video so we can refer, send videos to our local GPs and things like that. Because I do think that educating, collaborating, working with the multidisciplinary teams that are out there from the ground up, if it's nurses that are seeing patients or general practitioners, geriatricians, whoever's the physical therapist, anyone who wants to learn should be able to learn about Parkinson's so they can advocate and be cheerleaders, even the yoga teachers out there. So that's great. And I know on the specialty directory, actually, I looked it up, and you have abilities to refer people to nurses, nutrition, psychologists, genetic counselors, occupational therapists, physical therapists, psychiatrists, neurosurgeons, social workers, speech therapists, along with doctors and geriatricians and stuff that are interested in movement disorders. So I think that's really fabulous. Do you want to teach us a little bit, Claudia, about your sense of that multidisciplinary team who might be on it for an individual patient? Because I think the concept, it's just one, old neurologist sitting in an office and you get a prescription once in 6 months and you go away is not really the way that we're approaching Parkinson's.
So we really have the great opportunity in our hospital to have a multidisciplinary team on site. And in Germany, it is possible that you bring Parkinson patients as inpatient in certain circumstances if they are having problems with their medication. And there are many reasons why there can be difficulties in Parkinson's disease. So we are able to bring them in maybe for up to 2 weeks and then have a special program for the 2 weeks. So we change the pharmacotherapy, but in parallel, they can get what we call complex treatments. And this means a multidisciplinary treatment. There's always a physiotherapist within the team. For some patients, it's speech therapy, it's ergotherapy, so some behavioral therapists. And it depends then on the individual abilities or disabilities. So we can change it in some ways, but always the physiotherapist has to be with within the team. And sometimes we also have walks outside the hospital for those who are capable to do that. And this is a program that the patients really like and they benefit from it. And we have treatments within a small group, but also we have individual treatments, just one therapist, one patient. And this combination, this is also reimbursed by the insurance, but you have to follow certain rules in the hospitals. What we do, it's sometimes not easy, but we can do it. And the patients really love it. And what they get out of it, that this is a model, what they can do at home. It makes no sense to make it only in the hospital and then to totally stop it. Sometimes a partner comes with the patient and watches what they are doing, and then they can support the patient at home. So I think a multidisciplinary approach, sometimes with a psychologist, not to forget, just to deal with how can I overcome this chronic disease? How should I communicate it to friends, to partners? Sometimes this is as difficult as walking or riding or any motor skill.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's really amazing that you're able to do that and even get the insurance to pay for it. I don't think we have quite that ability here, but I think we can try to at least incorporate physical therapy. And there's been a move to refer patients earlier, even at diagnosis of Parkinson's, to physical therapists to start on a regimen and work, throughout the course. Other interesting things that I found on the website included some telemedicine support. And I think that there's some instructions in a webinar for doctors who are trying to learn about telemedicine, and also I think some patient resources around telemedicine. And then COVID-specific resources, which I found really interesting, which included people who are maybe have Parkinson's, who've gotten COVID, and the ability to submit their cases to see how our patients are doing with COVID, so that there's this real world network of people gathering information about how to support patients with this, in this pandemic. And also a webinar on medication interactions with COVID and Parkinson's disease, I guess. So there's a lot of interesting resources. So definitely important to point, if you're out there and you're seeing somebody who may not know about the Movement Disorder Society webpage, you can advocate and tell your doctors to go on there and find these resources. I think that's really, really key. So a couple of other things I wanted to ask you, Claudia. One is, there's been this real sort of worry that Parkinson's, Parkinson's disease has been designated in and of itself as a pandemic, that there's an increased number of cases that we're seeing, and it's actually doubled, I think, in 40 years, and will continue to double, as we, and increase in numbers, pretty dramatically. What do you attribute that increase in numbers to?
I think at least in the Western population, the demographics are the major driver for the increase of the numbers. So people are really getting older, which is good, because we have better treatments also for blood pressure, for diabetes, for many other diseases. So they are getting older, and the prevalence of Parkinson's disease has a very strong age component. So the older the people are, even over the age of 80, it still increases. So this is one reason, I would say a major reason. The other reason is that the duration of Parkinson's disease is longer. So we see many more PD patients who have 10 years of PD, 15 years of PD, which is also good because we can manage the disease as long, and they still may have a good quality of life. And this is a different message as we had like 20 years ago. And so altogether, there are more patients out with Parkinson's, those newly diagnosed, but also those living longer with Parkinson's disease. And then, but there's still a gap. There is still an increase that we think goes back to some environmental factors, maybe toxins. This is not quite clear yet. It increases in the Western countries, but also it increases in the Eastern one, and it will definitely increase in China, as the entire generation at this age in the next 10 years gets about 60 and older. So we will have a massive increase of Parkinson's disease in Asia.
And I think the statistics, I think you put up a slide that 1 in 100,000 patients under the age of 50 is affected by Parkinson's, 1 in 100 over the age of 60, and over the age of 75, it's 1 in 50. So it definitely increases with age, and is you know, many people are living longer. You also talked about the burden of the disease. And so I guess that has to do with the amount of time that people are living with the disease is longer. And so we're doing a better job of treating this, but also as people are living longer, we have to care for them longer and care about these, especially the non-motor issues that we don't have great treatments for. I think as it becomes sort of a thing that we're trying to you know, work around. There's been some questions, Claudia, about how patients can get more involved with some of these causes from your perspective, and if the Movement Disorder Society has a way. It sounds like you want tips on what topics could be on the list of handouts, and if there's languages missing that people want to see, maybe they can give you feedback on that. But are there other ways that you envision, and I know this is growing because it was a society largely started just, you know, by doctors for doctors, but now we're really expanding to this multidisciplinary aspect and globally, and also including patients with resources. So what's your thoughts on how patients can maybe give feedback and advocate for some of these things, and maybe if there's a way that patients can get involved with the Movement Disorder Society?
Usually in Philadelphia, we had planned a big event with patients. It was already planned and organized, and with some open discussions. So we already have assigned experts to answer all these questions. And with the COVID-19, this has all changed and will be different. I think we can, the Movement Disorder Society, maybe in the next years more be able to provide also education for patients, not only at the big Congress and the city of the Congress, if this is again on site, what we will hope, but seeing you all here, I think we could also provide more virtual education. And I would say this is also a different generation already of Parkinson patients, because in some years ago, but also in some regions, we would not have been able to talk to patients in these virtual ways as we do now. And this, I think, is an excellent opportunity. And I will bring back this to the Movement Disorder Society, that we can also organize some maybe seminars or question rounds just with our experts, as we really have them. And we can do this, we already are doing this on a local and regional way. And I think World Brain Day is the absolute best day to talk about that. As I know, I just looked at the webpage on Facebook from the Thai Society of Parkinson's Disease in Bangkok, and there were the patients, and they did some dancing for the World Brain Day. I found that was fantastic. And we provided some videos, and Rongroy, the section chair, he gave some introduction. So I think we can have these virtual meetings maybe in the future as a routine for education, not only for our doctors, but also for patients. And we already doing this for healthcare professionals. We have implemented a new program that's called Train the Trainer. And Train the Trainer means that we train one expert, maybe on physiotherapy, on how to treat physiotherapy in PD in English. And this trainer, who is maybe from Portugal, goes back in his or her country and does the training in Portuguese for other Portuguese physiotherapists, so that we really can go into the regions, because then we also need the local languages.
Absolutely. I mean, I will just say that this has been a real pleasure to host, and, you know, the PMD Alliance has been very gracious, and we've had, you know, hundreds of people on some of these calls, and then hundreds of people watching these videos afterwards. So the patients are definitely hungry, and many of the people that I've invited on the call have been members of our society who are very high ranking, of all sorts, from all over the world, actually, who've woken up early or stayed up late in the UK or Australia or whatever, just to be on here and give back to our patients. So it's been really easy to arrange, and I'm happy to help with that if there is an interest, because I think it's so needed. And once you do a video, it's out there in a library, and we can have, you know, these topics available for our patients to watch. And I think it really is one of the things that I think has been really a silver lining of COVID is to really connect us all globally. We realize that one virus that starts somewhere can affect all of us, you know, across the world, and that altruism of, you know, wearing a mask or washing our hands or being socially distanced can make a difference for each other, to keep us all healthy. I think in the same way with Parkinson's and the World Brain Day and the inspiration that we can take from each other and what all of us are doing, it's been, I also watch a lot of those dances and have been amused by the Indian neurologists doing some interesting dance moves as well. I don't know what they're doing, but anyway. So
are really topping everything.
Really fun. So I think, you know, just getting together and training the trainer, but I think the real take-home messages, it sounds like, are education, both for patients and for doctors locally, advocacy. So getting involved, empower yourself with these ways where you exercise, you get good night's sleep, and you'll feel better as a patient. Also connecting each other through these ways globally, you know, and working together to kind of, you know, fight this disease, I think makes a lot of sense, you know, on a national and international level, as the Movement Disorder Society has been doing. And I think maybe, Claudia, I think there's just, this time has flown by. I'm just going to give you maybe a few minutes of inspiration. You can say what you'd like, just to close and inspire our group here, and hopefully those that'll watch this video later on World Brain Day, as we've all gathered together to, you know, sort of draw attention and celebrate one another and sort of the family that we have globally here, but also to really advocate and draw attention to the importance of caring about this disease in an important way. So I'll give you a few minutes to close, Claudia.
Okay, thank you. I think you mentioned so many important issues for Parkinson's disease patients, and maybe I just want to add one, because I think it is a very individual disease, and to listen to a Parkinson patient, I always say to my doctors, which sometimes they may not really like to hear this, but I tell them the patient is always right. So because the views are often different. So if I see a Parkinson disease patient walking, and the walking is very slow, and I think this is the problem, and the patient tells me finally, my big problem is my tremor, and I see a small little tremor, and I think this may be not the problem, but for this patient it is the problem, because this tremor is the problem. He wants to go with his family out for dinner, and this tremor disturbs him. So I think listening to the patient is, in Parkinson's disease, very important. And sometimes the patient gives you some clues about the disease that you would not finally have detected. Also about how Parkinson's disease could worsen and what had happened, maybe some inflammatory diseases that may worsen than disease, so that we have these steps. There is some inflammation or influenza, whatever. So some weeks later, something is really worse. So you would not believe it with the same medication, but the patient tells you now it's worse. And then you have to ask why. And then you find out there was some event. And this is well known in science also, that inflammation can worsen Parkinson's disease. So just as an example, I would say, listen to the patients, and sometimes you have to listen to both the patients and the partners, which is not always the same, as you know. Sometimes I have to talk to the wives because the wives ask me, why is he not coming with me, visiting friends? Why he's not doing this? Why he's not exercising enough? So they are complaining a lot. And it's understandable, but the patient may not be able to do all these activities. And I think we have also to admit there is a limit of what a Parkinson patient after 10 years of disease can do. And if he prefers to stay at home sometimes and not to go out and not to do exercise, we should accept that. And I think so we have to see both sides, but finally the patient is the one, I would say, who is right.
Okay, so that's very inspiring. The patient's right. And so I think if you're the patient, make sure that you find somebody who listens to you and you can, advocate for yourself. And hopefully with some of the resources, and we'll post some of these website links, you can find doctors that know about your disease. And if you have the right doctor, but they just aren't knowledgeable, hopefully we can get some resources to teach them more shortly, and also continue to do patient education through maybe this type of venue with other movement disorder doctors. I'd love to partner with that. So thank you so much, Claudia. I know it's been a long day and you probably have even more events to rush off to. It's like the Academy Awards Day for Parkinson's patients, and you have to make an appearance at every event. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's been just such a pleasure to hear from you. And I'm so excited to have you as our new president of the Movement Disorder Society. Thank you. And I'll hand it back to Sarah for our final wave.
Okay, thank you so much. This was fantastic. You got some thumbs up from people when you were speaking, I saw. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Indu, for facilitating it. And one of the ways we want to say thank you is by giving you a friendly wave goodbye. And thank you for being with us. We look forward to doing this again soon. It was wonderful to be with all of you.
Bye, guys. Take care. Happy Brain Day.
Happy Brain Day. Bye-bye.
You and Sarah, it was very nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
And to everyone, stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.